Welcome back, students. Let's discuss foreign exchange. So we're moving beyond GDP, for example, for a particular country. And in macroeconomics, we also cover very large markets. So we're going to discuss the world market for foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is just the same FX as we abbreviate. It's just the same as money markets, for our country or for one country, but it relates to the foreign money in another country. So when we use other countries' money, we call it foreign exchange or FX. It's also abbreviated Forex, Forex in the business. So these are the chapters that we're covering. Money market was covered here. Foreign exchange over here. So we've already covered money markets. So we're not going to review that. And let's talk about foreign exchange. Now, the supply curve is straight up and down, let's say at $8 trillion in 2008, because foreign exchange markets have millions and millions of people 24 hours a day exchanging money for US dollars. All foreign exchange is exchanged to US dollars. If you need to go from, let's say, Swiss francs to euros, you would make a deal Swiss francs to dollars and dollars to euros. Everything is done through dollars. We're the world's reserve currency, which means that everything flows through us. Now, the supply, since there's millions of transactions every second throughout the world, all the businesses doing world trade, all the investors investing around the world, even your professor has some investments in other countries, then the supply is a set amount, because we're only going to be looking at the one instant, the 1 second, a photograph or static picture, the one instant that a foreign exchange trade is done, because the foreign exchange rate is constantly changing. We need to photograph it or stop it and look at it in one instant. Therefore, the government supply of money, let's say in the US dollars on the left, the government supply of money is not going to change in an instant. Basically, the Federal Reserve will print more money, or the Treasury will borrow more money every 1 or 2 weeks at the most frequent. So depending on the government budget, and monetary needs. So we're going to look at the supply at a fixed point in time. At a fixed point in time, it can change. Think about the cash in your wallet. Is that going to change from 1 second to the next or one day to the next, depending on interest rates? No, it is what it is. The total amount of money or currency in the economy at any one point in time, it is what it is until the Federal Reserve prints more. It's the total of all the money available in the economy and banks. So the supply is not going to be affected by the price of the money on the left. That's why supply is a straight line up and down. So in the short run, which we're looking at, it's only going to be affected, the price of the money is only going to be affected by demand. Now let's look at this here. Now this is the US currency. How do we know it's the value of the US currency? Because even if the graph is not labeled, it would say US dollars here at the bottom. The domestic currency, the supply of the currency is in dollars. So the quantity will say dollars, and that's a clue that we're looking at the value of the US dollar. Also, even if it has no title, also the domestic currency is in the denominator here of the foreign exchange price. You must memorize this formula. Foreign exchange price is the foreign currency over the domestic currency. So domestic currency will also be on the bottom here. So if you see US dollars here on the bottom here, or US dollars on the bottom here, it means we're looking at the value of the US dollars. Now, why, if it's the value of the dollars, do we put dollars in the denominator? Doesn't seem to make sense, right? Well, let's think about it this way. Since most of you are not trading foreign currency, I'll give you an analogy, an example from your childhood. Let's suppose when you're very small and you're playing with other children, you often trade toys or trade stickers or trade cards. When I was a kid, I would trade baseball cards, which had a picture of a baseball player, and then on the back would have all statistics. So the greatest players, or that had the lowest supply of cards, would be the most valuable because they're rare, and so it's harder to get them. So there's people are willing to pay up to a higher price. The very bad players that have many cards available, they're not worth very much. So you can think about it as trading baseball cards. Or I'll give you another example. Think about it as trading comic books. So suppose that your friend has a comic book, it's a Wonder Woman, and it's a really good, thick comic book with 2 or 3 stories in it and very good artwork. And your friend, however, only has My Little Pony comic books when you're small, which are much simpler and not very complicated plot and really not great artistically because of the quality and the writing. So your friend comes to you and they say, listen, I want to buy your Wonder Woman. So let's suppose Wonder Woman is like the US dollar, which is high in demand. And My Little Ponies are not high in demand, let's say. And so they're some other currency, not the US dollar. So in this example, let's say Wonder Woman is like the US dollar, it's very valuable. And My Little Pony is less valuable, like, for example, the Chinese currency today on the right-hand side. Let's focus on the left-hand side. So your friend comes to you and says, listen, I want to trade you one of My Little Ponies for your Wonder Woman. And you say, no, are you kidding me? This Wonder Woman is awesome. And the My Little Pony is a very thin, simple story. I'm not interested. So your friend will say, okay, I'll give you 5 of them for your 5 different ones of them for your Wonder Woman. And you think, well, my little sister likes My Little Pony, so I may be willing to sacrifice my Wonder Woman for 5 of the 5 Little Ponies. It'll make my little sister happy. But you think about it, you say, no, it's still not enough. So finally your friend says, okay, I give up. I'll give you 10 My Little Ponies for your Wonder Woman. And you really like your little sister, so you'll be like, okay, 10 My Little Ponies. She'll be happy for 10 months and get her off my back also. So fine, it's a deal. So what's the value of your Wonder Woman comic? Well, it would mean that you have one Wonder Woman comic down here under DC. Ironically, it is DC Comics, I think, that produces them just by coincidence. You have one Wonder Woman comic here in the DC, and its value is 10 of the foreign My Little Pony comic books. So the value is 10 to 1, 10 of their currency for one of yours, 10 of their comics, foreign currency, 10 of their My Little Pony comic books for one of your Wonder Woman. That tells you that your Wonder Woman comic is worth, in the trading market, if you're trading the currency of comic books, is worth 10 of theirs, 10 My Little Ponies. So the value would be 10 to 1 of the dollar, right? So it would be 10, and this actually should say yuan here, but it doesn't fit, Chinese yuan. 10 Chinese yuan for $1 is the value of your currency, or 10 My Little Ponies for your one Wonder Woman is the value of your comic book. But by analogy, 10 of theirs, which is 10 Chinese yuan, is worth 1 of yours, which is 1 US dollar. Okay, so in my analogy, Wonder Woman comic is a US dollar, and 10 My Little Ponies are 10 Chinese yuan. So again, you measure the value of your currency depending how much of theirs they're willing to give you. If they're willing to give you 1,000 of their pesos for one of your dollar, that means that your dollar is worth a lot to them. And conversely, their peso is not worth a lot to you if they have to give you 1,000 of them. So that's how it works here. And it's going to be 10 to 1. It means the demand is high. So see the D0 curve here. If the demand is high, if they really, really, really want that Wonder Woman comic or that US dollar, they're going to give you a lot of My Little Ponies or a lot of Chinese yuan. So it used to be back in 2009 that 2005, 2009, around there, that the Chinese currency was not worth that much because their economy was still in its early development and very small compared to ours. So their money was not in that much demand for trade. So they're willing to give us 10 of theirs for 1 of ours, right? So 10 to 1. It means in some situations when you go to that country, you can buy 10 times as much food for the same price as $1 here. That means the demand is high. So do you understand? Now, conversely, let's say that now that suddenly it's a couple of years later, and you go back to your friend and say, listen, I want to trade you another one of these Wonder Woman comics. But your friend has grown up a little bit, and they're like, yeah, I'm really not that interested. But, my little sister might be, but I'm really not that interested. I've grown up and moved beyond that. So, but you agree to a deal. They agree to give you, okay, I'll give you 7 of my old My Little Ponies for one of your Wonder Womans at this point, and then I'll just give, you both give them to your little sisters, so our little brothers. So the demand is lower. So when the demand is lower, again, please remember supply and demand, which is the core of most of economics. Demand is lower, so you're only going to get, sorry, not 7 to 1, 5 to 1. You're only going to get 5 of theirs for one of yours. So similarly, if the demand for the dollar is low, they're only going to give you 5 of their currency for one of yours. I think this was the case in 2015 when the Chinese economy was very, very strong and very, very big and growing at a very rapid pace. And so demand for Chinese currency was higher. And so the Chinese didn't really need, that much US. The world didn't need that much US dollars. The Chinese didn't need that much US dollars because they were growing on their own. And they had a lot of products on their own due to economic growth. So if the demand goes down, the price of the dollar will be 5 yuan for $1. Okay. And then let's say at the 8, if this is in trillions, this would be a 8 trillion yuan for the $1 trillion. $8 trillion that are available. Now, we have to understand that if you look at the price of your currency as how much of their foreign currency for your domestic currency, that's the value of your currency, then in their country, these two numbers are going to flip around, right? Because in China, when we look at the Chinese currency, this is how many dollars you'll give for a Chinese yuan. So in the Chinese currency, who's the foreign currency for Chinese? Is it the Chinese yuan or the US dollar? So for the Chinese, obviously, the foreign currency is the dollar. So here you would put $1 in the numerator because that's the foreign currency. And here you have $1 in the denominator on the left because that's the domestic currency. So this dollar on the bottom becomes a dollar on the top for them. And what about the domestic currency for Chinese? It's the Chinese yuan. So here you're going to put, let's say, for this point in time, 10 on the bottom, 10 of their domestic Chinese yuan. And here was 10 on the left. The foreign currency was yuan. It was 10 on the top. But now we're in China. Their domestic currency is 10. So the 10 goes on the bottom. So this was 10 to 1 yuan to dollars. And at the same point in time over here, it's going to be $1 to 10 yuan. 1 to 10 is the value of the yuan. So you're going to see that down here as $1 over 10 yuan, which is 1/10, which is 10 cents, okay? So it makes sense, right? This graph is, at any point in time, is the exact inverse of this graph because it's an equation with a numerator and denominator with the same two numbers, just flipped, just inverted. So the two values must be perfectly in sync, just inverted or upside down, or like in a mirror, just flipped. So you're only going to give them 10 cents for their currency, and they're going to give you 10 yuan for your currency. So how does that make sense? Think about it this way. Their currency is worth 10 cents. So if they give you 10 of their currency, 10 times 10 cents is how much? It's $1. So that's 10 yuan to the dollar. So you see how it works out? If your currency is worth 10 to 1 of theirs, their currency is worth 1 over 10 of yours. It's a mirror image. And again, 10 of theirs is worth $1. And you can see that because 10 times 10 cents is $1. So it's perfectly in sync. Now, so your demand is very high. It means the demand for their currency must be very low. Moving along, now that their demand for the dollar is low, it means that their demand for the world demand for their own money must be higher. So over here, they're willing to give you 5 to 1, 5 UN for $1. It means that over here, you're willing to give them $1 for 5 of theirs, or you're willing to give them 20 cents. 1/5 is 0.20, 20 cents for their currency. And again, it makes sense because if they're going to give you 5 of theirs for $1, well, 5 times 20 cents is $1, right? So that's perfectly in sync. So if your demand is lower, their demand is higher. And here we did, the demand is cut in half, 10 to 5 for the $1. And here their demand is the opposite. This is 1/2 is 1/2. So if this is 1/2 of the demand, then this must be 2 to 1, right? So they're 10 cents. At this point, they're 10 cents. Your value's gone down by half, 1/2. Their value's gone up by 2/1. Their 10 cents is 2 times more valuable, or 20 cents. It's a perfectly mirror image. Please study this, draw these on your own on a blank sheet of paper while covering up the notes, and then copy over and peek and copy over these graphs on your own until you can draw it out by yourself and understand how the lines move by yourself. That's the way to internalize it into your mind. Okay, now let's talk about moving right along the little topics I just covered. Let's talk about trade. So this is a different graph. And how does this work? So this is the point of view from the point of view of your country, and why do we need to trade money with other countries? So let's try to understand that. And let's suppose the price for your t-shirt at Macy's is $20. This is the equilibrium price. Again, we're looking at it from the point of view of your own country. So the price of your t-shirt in the US might be $20 or $30, let's say at Macy's, but let's say $20. But here, P star, that's the foreign price. So this is the price that Walmart used to buy t-shirts for $10 from and sell them for $10 from China, because they're made in China. So Walmart could buy them from China and sell them for $10. Back in before Trump started with the tariffs back in 2015. So because this is the pure international price. So Walmart at that time, 1/4 of our trade deficit with China was due to Walmart, because Walmart was getting just about everything from China except the food. So you have a choice. You go to Macy's, pay the US price, the equilibrium price in the US of $20, or go to Walmart and pay the price for the Chinese goods at $10. What's going to happen? So the demand, if the price is lower, what happens to demand? Remember the law of demand? The lower the price, the more the demand. So the demand is going to go up for the $10 versus the $20. People are going to run away from Macy's and run to Walmart if they care about the price. And then what's going to happen in the supply? Again, this is in the US. The US suppliers, if they're supplying it at 20, they're okay. They're over here at equilibrium. But if you tell the US suppliers, listen, the factories in the US, you have to give us a supply that we can sell them at $10, maybe half of them will drop out and say, no, we can't make any money that way. We're just breaking even and losing money. We're out. So remember the law of supply, the lower the price, the less profit, and the less suppliers. So supply will go down. So at the lower price, you have less US supply and higher US demand. This creates a shortage. And how do we fill the shortage? Well, this is at the Chinese price. We fill the shortage by Walmart importing the Chinese goods. So this means more imports from China. That's what the shortage represents. And if we were to look at China's GDP, it would be exports for them, right? So if this, for the Chinese, it would be exports, but we're looking at it from the US point of view, from your own country's point of view. And from our country's point of view, it's imports. If we have a shortage, we don't have enough goods at that price, we have to get them to somebody else. So that's the point of a tariff. Why do we do tariffs? Or why is Trump so intent on doing tariffs? He's the only one who's done them in a long time, maybe 100 years. So if you add a tariff, you're adding P star plus T, T for tariff or tax. It's a tax on the foreign goods, and it raises the price back to the equilibrium price in the US. And that means if you buy a t-shirt in the US from Macy's, $20. And then if you pay the tariff at Walmart, it will also be $20, right? And what's the purpose of that? Well, it means higher prices for consumers generally, but it also means that you're taking jobs away from the Chinese making those t-shirts, and you're giving those jobs to Americans making those t-shirts. And so you're increasing our GDP. Because remember, imports subtract from our GDP because we're using it, taking some of our income in the circular flow of the economy. We're taking some of our income out of the circular flow of the economy and shipping it overseas and giving other people jobs and other people higher wages. And if we don't have imports, then it means more jobs in the US, more GDP in the US. We're keeping more of our income in the circular flow of the economy. Imports are a leakage out. If you think of the circular flow of the economy like a zeppelin or a balloon shape, imports are a leaking out, where the income on the left-hand side is leaking out. And so that reduces our GDP. So that's how tariffs work as well. Now let's look at it from this point of view. I'm going to use Germany as an example. Suppose we're all Germans, sprechen Sie Deutsch? We're all Germans, and this is Germany now, okay? So our own home country now is Germany. We're moving overseas. We now all live in Berlin. Got it? So now what does Germany do? Well, their price for a car, a German car that people are willing to pay, be it a Benz or a BMW or an Audi, is maybe $30,000 over here. Okay, so that's what the Germans want to pay. Again, we're in the German market now. But the companies that make these high quality cars, be it Mercedes, Benz, Audi, BMW, they want to charge twice that. They want to charge, let's say, $70,000. And so what's going to happen, again, the law of demand, the German customers, very few of them are going to want to pay the $70,000. They want to pay $30,000. So they'll drop out of those luxury brands and instead buy a, let's say, Volkswagen or something. So law of demand, if the price is higher, demand goes down. And what about the supply? Well, of course, Mercedes and these people, if they can charge double the money, they can make twice as much profit. So they're going to be willing to invest more to create more supply and manufacture more of these cars because they can make twice as much money. So they're going to want to produce more cars. The law of supply is the price goes up, profit goes up, sales go up, profit goes up, and so the supply goes up. So what do we have here? We have a lot of supply of BMWs in Germany and much lower demand for BMWs in Germany. We have a surplus. So what's Germany going to do with all these $70,000 cars? Well, if they can't sell them in Germany, they're going to sell them in the US, they're going to sell them in China, they're going to sell them elsewhere. So if you have a surplus, that means the country is going to have exports, and therefore their GDP is going to go up. So please understand, a shortage here means imports because you don't have enough goods at the low price, at the low world price, and so you have to bring them in from overseas. And a high price over here in your country means exports because you have a surplus, you have too many cars you can't sell, and so you're going to put them on boats and ship them overseas. And we will pause right there for the moment.